The hum of the alien warship was not mechanical, it was alive, or at least it sounded like it was trying to be. A deep, vibrating thrum echoed through the corridors, a low-pitched groan like a slumbering beast. Elias sat hunched in a corner of the cold-holding cell, trying not to breathe too loudly. Not that it mattered. There were no guards watching him, not visibly at least. His wrists were still shackled to the wall with smooth bands of a material he didn't recognize. Some alloy that shimmered slightly under the dim blue lighting, like it enjoyed its job too much. His ankle was free, which he had to admit felt like a cruel joke. "Thanks," he muttered toward the nearest sensor node, "for leaving me one limb to scratch my nose. Very generous." The wall made a soft chiming sound in response. Mocking him. Elias wasn't a soldier. He told them that repeatedly during the interrogation, though the interrogators seemed less interested in what he said and more interested in how much his jaw could handle before it broke. He was a systems analyst, which was a fancy way of saying he read other people's mistakes and filed reports about them. His biggest battle before this had been against outdated code bases and over-caffeinated team leaders. And now he was about to die. Or at least that was the logical conclusion, considering the alien captain had made a show of saying, in what he assumed was a ceremonial language, something that ended with the universal signal of drawing a blade and pointing it at his face. The door hissed. He turned his head slowly, suppressing the urge to flinch. The air changed. It always did when she walked in. Commander Saria. He didn't know her name at first. He just called her the blue one in his head like an idiot. She was taller than him by a few inches, armor glistening with the oil-slick shine of the ship's material. Her skin was a dusky blue, not vibrant, not pale, but deep like the ocean before a storm. Her hair was yellow, not blonde yellow like something out of a chemical experiment gone right, and her ears were long, almost elfin but without the whimsy. She carried herself like a glacier, beautiful, sharp, and absolutely unforgiving. She stepped into the cell, eyes unreadable, hands resting lightly on the hilts of twin blades she wore at her hips. She said nothing. "Hello again," Elias said, flashing what he hoped was a charming smile. Back for another round of stare at the human until he panics. No answer, he sighed. Look, if this is about what I said to the other guard, he really did look like a squid wearing armor. That wasn't meant as an insult, more like culinary admiration. Still nothing, but her brow twitched, slightly. Progress. She stepped forward, close enough that he could smell the cool metallic tang of her armor mixed with something faintly floral, something not human. She crouched, one knee clicking against the floor, and studied him as if trying to solve a puzzle, or deciding which way would be least messy to end him. Then she raised her hand. Elias instinctively recoiled, but her hand stopped in the air. And lowered again. She unlatched his wrist shackle, just like that. No ceremony, no speech. Elias blinked. "Wait, that's it. Is this the part where I try to run and get disintegrated for your entertainment? Because, fair warning, I'm not fast, and I'll probably trip over my own shoes." Still nothing. She pulled a small, rounded object from her belt, something that looked like a cross between a grenade and a fancy paperweight, and placed it on the wall. The lights dimmed instantly. The sensor node fizzled and sparked, letting out a displeased chirp before going dark. Now they were in silence, real silence. She met his eyes. Her voice, when it came, was low and clipped. "You must come, now." He hesitated. "Well, normally I'd say no to vague demands from heavily armed strangers, but seeing as you're saving me from certain death, I'll overlook the lack of pleasantries." She didn't respond to the joke, just turned and walked. Elias rubbed his freed wrist, which tingled oddly, and followed. The hall outside was colder than the cell. Panels pulsed with faint energy, and the walls curved in a way that made it hard to judge where the floor ended and ceiling began. It wasn't designed for humans, that was for sure. Saria moved like a shadow, her boots making no sound, her presence like gravity, impossible to ignore. He caught up to her, whispering, "So, what's the plan?" I assume it doesn't involve asking nicely at the front door. You ask many questions. Occupational hazard. Data analysts are basically paid to be nosy. She stopped suddenly. Her hand shot out and pressed him against the wall just as two guards marched past an intersection up ahead. He could feel the heat of her through the armor, and for a moment they were too close, too still. When the guards passed, she didn't move away immediately. "I'm not supposed to kill you," she said softly without looking at him. Elias blinked. "Wow, that's the most romantic thing anyone said to me all year." Her eyes narrowed. He cleared his throat. "Sorry, it's a defense mechanism. I joke when I'm terrified, which, just for the record, I am deeply." She pulled away and moved on. He followed, mind spinning. "Not supposed to kill me." That sounded almost worse. They reached a maintenance duct sealed by a biometric scanner. Saria placed her hand on it and it opened with a soft hiss. She motioned for him to go in first. "Ladies first," he offered. She frowned. "You do not trust me." He blinked. "Honestly, I don't trust anyone on a ship full of aliens who wanted me dead yesterday." She seemed to accept that. They crawled through the narrow shaft in silence. Elias grunted as he bumped his head for the third time. "Tell me again why all alien tech is built for people with either 6 limbs or no concept of comfort. You complain much for someone being rescued." "Oh, is that what this is?" he muttered. "Because from where I'm crawling, it feels more like a kidnapping with extra steps." Finally, they dropped down into a dark storage bay, lined with weapon crates and dormant drones. Saria lit a small palm beacon and scanned the room. Elias sat against a crate, breathing hard. "So, why help me?" She didn't answer right away. Then finally, "Because you were not afraid." He frowned. "Oh no, I was afraid. I was just hiding it really badly." She tilted her head. "Most scream, you did not." "I was too busy imagining all the terrible ways I'd die. I couldn't pick just one." Her lips almost twitched. Almost. But before either of them could say more, a small panel near the corner of the room flickered to life. A symbol appeared, a pulsing red triangle with a rotating spiral inside it. Elias didn't recognize it, but Saria did. Her face turned pale. Even with blue skin, the change was visible. "That shouldn't be here," she whispered. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to it, pressed her hand to the panel, and it recognized her. Then it recognized him too. The panel flashed green. Saria turned slowly to look at him, eyes wide. "They knew," she said, voice cracking. "They knew you would survive." Elias' blood went cold, and then the room locked down around them, doors sealed, lights flared red. "Okay," he said slowly, "I'm officially done pretending this is a normal day." The sirens weren't loud. They pulsed in the walls like a second heartbeat, quiet, rhythmic, and urgent. Elias stared at the sealed door as if it might magically open with polite insistence. It didn't. Saria was already moving, her fingers dancing across the interface panel, eyes scanning the symbols only she could understand. "Is this normal?" Elias asked, voice higher than he'd intended. "No." "Cool, cool. Just wanted to be sure we were equally terrified." Saria didn't reply. Her mouth was set in a tight line, the muscles in her jaw working like she was chewing on a decision. The panel kept rejecting her override attempts. A tiny, unhelpful beep followed each failed command. Elias leaned closer. "Want me to try swearing at it in 4 languages? That usually helps with stubborn tech." "It is not the interface," she muttered. "It's the ship. It has changed its security protocols. Because of me. Because of us." That distinction didn't make him feel better. Elias backed away as she knelt and pried open a wall panel. Inside was a mess of glowing cables and fluid-filled tubes, one of which had a faint blue pulse that matched the lights overhead. The ship felt like a living thing now, like it had veins and blood, like it was watching them. "Do you need tools?" he asked, trying to be helpful. "No, I need time." "Time? Excellent. I'll go brew us a cup of we're locked in a potentially hostile storage bay with a mystery glowing panel tea." Her gaze flicked to him. "You talk constantly." "Only when nervous," he replied cheerfully. So all the time, something shifted in her expression, not a smile exactly, but the faintest twitch of amusement. She went back to rewiring. Elias wandered the room, trying not to touch anything that might explode or scream. He found a crate labeled with alien symbols and a rough sketch that resembled a very angry insect. He left that one alone. Another crate was partially open, revealing small round devices the size of coins. He picked one up and immediately regretted it when it blinked red. Saria, what's this? She didn't even look up. If it begins to hum, throw it. Throw it where? Anywhere that isn't near me. He stared at the device in horror until it blinked green again. He placed it back with exaggerated care. Your ship needs better labeling, maybe some friendly pictograms. Danger. Instant vaporization would be nice. She ignored him. Eventually, Saria gave a sharp grunt and closed the panel. A second later, the overhead lights dimmed to a steady blue. The sirens faded. The door clicked but didn't open. Okay, improvement. Elias offered. It disabled lockdown, she said, wiping her hands on her armored thigh. But the ship is still watching. We must leave fast. Any chance we walk out, and the hallway is full of cake and friendly faces. She blinked at him. Is that a human metaphor for something? Let's just go, he sighed. They slipped into the corridor, sticking close to the shadows. The lighting had changed. No longer cold and clinical, it now pulsed with a slow strobe, as if the ship's heart was beating faster. Saria took the lead, motioning for silence. Elias followed, stepping gingerly, trying not to make jokes that would get him killed. Or laughed at. Or both. Twice they passed patrols, but Saria seemed to know the patrol patterns. She guided them through maintenance shafts, utility walkways, and one claustrophobic ventilation tunnel that smelled like burning algae. Elias learned that Saria hated tight spaces. She didn't say it, she didn't say much, but her jaw clenched harder the deeper they crawled. At one point she paused and hissed a command. A drone passed just overhead. Elias leaned closer. Do you ever sleep? No. Oh, okay. Wow, not ominous at all. They reached a secondary access port that led to the hydroponic level. Saria hesitated at the control panel. What is it? Elias asked. There should be more guards. Do you want me to go first? She stared at him. I was kidding, he said quickly. Obviously, I'm fragile and full of secrets. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, lush green vines crawled across the walls, fed by artificial light. Water dripped from unseen reservoirs. For a moment it felt peaceful, alive. A stark contrast to the rest of the cold ship. Elias stepped in first, half expecting the plants to grab him. They didn't. Wow, he murmured. I didn't expect jungle vibes on a warship. Biostabilization bay, Saria said. This is how we grow sustenance and filter air. It's beautiful, he said, touching a thick leaf. You know, I used to keep a cactus. It died. I think it judged me. She raised an eyebrow. He waved it off. Anyway, what's our play? From here, she said, pointing to a sealed bulkhead on the far wall, we can access the emergency launch pods, but there's a complication. Of course there is. There is a retinal scan, she continued. Only High Command can access it. Let me guess, you're not High Command. She hesitated. I was. Elias blinked. Oh, ousted in a coup. Stripped of rank for saving a squishy little human. Her silence confirmed enough. Well, he said, stretching his arms, if I get vaporized trying to override an alien eyeball scanner, tell them I died cool. But he never got the chance. As they approached the bulkhead, the panel lit up and displayed his face. Saria froze. Elias stepped back. I didn't touch anything. The scanner chirped. A voice, mechanical, female, and speaking in clipped alien syllables, declared something. Saria translated. It just granted you access. What, why? I don't know. The panel turned green. The door opened. Inside was a chamber of sleek black seats, interfaces waiting to be touched, and a pod that looked far too small to survive atmospheric re-entry. Saria didn't move. Elias stepped in slowly, studying everything. Why would it grant me access? he asked aloud. Your blood, she murmured. He turned. Saria looked at him, expression troubled. The panel recognized you as command, but not because of who you are. Elias swallowed. Because of what I am. Yes. He sat down heavily on one of the chairs. So, they made me, like on purpose. It's possible. Your presence here was not an accident. Elias laughed, short and bitter. Great. I'm a walking security badge with delusions of free will. Saria knelt in front of him. You are more than that. He looked up. You hesitated when you first saw me. Why? She didn't answer. But then the ship rumbled. A message echoed overhead, code red, perimeter breach. A new party had boarded the ship. Saria stood. Another vessel has arrived. It's not mine. You mean? They're not here to help. Elias stood too. So we run. She nodded, but the interface beeped again. A new route opened on the map. It didn't lead to the launch pod, it led to the central core. Why would it show us that? He asked. Saria's face went pale again. Because it thinks you belong there. The hallway to the central core was unlike the rest of the ship. The walls weren't smooth metal, but were formed of layered, translucent panels that rippled faintly as if reacting to movement. Elias slowed, then stopped entirely. These aren't walls, he muttered. Saria turned. They are nerve conduits. This section is alive, part of the original design. The ship was grown, not built. Grown, he echoed, then jabbed a thumb toward the nearest panel. So this thing has a central nervous system. What's next? A digestive tract, a spleen. Please don't tell me it has a spleen. Saria tilted her head slightly. Why would a vessel require an organ specifically for red blood cell recycling? Elias squinted at her. That was oddly specific. I have studied your physiology. Oh, great. So you're not just rescuing me. You've also read my biological cliff notes. Just wait until you get to my seasonal allergies. Saria didn't smile, but her silence stretched just long enough to feel deliberate. They pressed forward. The path narrowed, the panels tightening around them like a throat closing. At one point the floor went soft, gelatinous, slightly warm, and Elias yelped. This is very upsetting, he announced. Your ship squishes. That should be illegal. It is faster than the conventional route, and less guarded. Right, because normal guards probably refuse to walk on carpet that feels like a fever dream. Still, he didn't stop. The light around them dimmed to violet, and a low throb, like a distant heartbeat, echoed through the walls. The closer they got to the central core, the less the ship resembled a structure and more a cathedral of alien biology. And it was watching. Saria touched a wall panel, and it responded by melting inward, revealing a tunnel of black fibers and suspended orbs that glowed faintly. Elias followed her in. How much of this do you actually understand? He asked. Less than I wish. That's comforting. They entered a chamber at the end of the tunnel. It pulsed like a heart. In the center, a massive orb hovered, rotating slowly, strands of light reaching out like veins. Elias stepped forward, drawn to it. His fingertips buzzed as he neared. Wait, Saria said sharply. Don't touch. Too late, the orb pulsed and a surge of heat burst through him. Not pain, but memory. Voices he didn't recognize. Colors that weren't colors, a child screaming. A lullaby in a language he never learned. He staggered back. Elias. He slumped to the floor, gasping. The lights above flickered, and for a moment his veins glowed faintly blue. Saria was at his side instantly. Her hand hovered near his chest, uncertain. What did you see? He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. I don't know, it wasn't mine, but it was. She looked up at the orb. Her face was unreadable. You're connected, she whispered. To the ship, to them. To who? But she didn't answer. Instead, she stood, walked to a side console and pressed her palm against it. A holographic projection appeared, data logs, schematics, alien text. She read in silence. Elias slowly pushed himself upright. What does it say? That you were part of something called Project Lahar, she said quietly. A human subject, implanted with hybrid material, activated only in proximity to a high-energy command vessel. He stared, implanted, when I never my whole life was just normal. She turned to face him. It was not. The air between them shifted. Elia stood slowly, hands shaking. You knew. Saria stiffened. I suspected. You what? I didn't know this, she said. Not all of it, but I knew you carried something. The orders were clear, do not kill. Do not contaminate, but they did not tell me why. He stepped back from her. So this wasn't a rescue, I'm just some experiment to you. No, her voice cracked. I chose to disobey, I chose to save you. Because you felt something. His voice trembled now too, but with betrayal. Or because you wanted to study me up close. She looked wounded, but not surprised. You were not supposed to be like this. Thanks, he snapped. That really helps. Before she could answer, the chamber darkened. A deep tone echoed, lower than sound, deeper than vibration. It came from below. Saria spun toward the orb. Something s waking. Define something, Elia said, still on edge. But she was already moving. At the console, she flipped through screens, then froze. A sleeper protocol was embedded in the ship. A bio-coded command. Your presence triggered it. What does that mean? It means, she said grimly, this ship thinks its weapon has arrived, and it's preparing to complete its mission. Suddenly, the core glowed bright white. A tendril of light shot out and latched onto Elia's chest. He screamed, stumbling back, but the tendril didn't burn, it scanned. Lines of alien symbols floated in front of him, changing, rewriting. Saria lunged, slicing the tendril with her blade. The connection severed. Elias dropped to his knees, coughing. I'm really tired, he gasped, of being scanned by things that don't say please. She knelt beside him. It scanned your DNA. You are now registered as a command node. Okay, he panted. That doesn't sound terrible. It is, she said, because now it will follow your orders. He blinked. What kind of orders? But before she could reply, a voice filled the chamber. It was Elia's voice, but cold, mechanical, emotionless. Mission confirmed. Target coordinates uploaded. Countdown initiated. Saria looked up sharply. It's launching. Elias pushed himself to his feet. Launching what? She stared at him. A strike, a bioplague. He froze. Wait, no. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Your presence confirmed it. He looked at the console. Red countdowns were flashing, systems activating. I can't stop this, she said. Only you can. Elias stepped forward, hands trembling. I don't know how. Then you must learn. They locked eyes. Because if you don't, she said softly, this ship will destroy everything. The lights in the core chamber pulsed with frantic intensity, casting shadows that twisted like living things. The countdown clock above them, red, silent, merciless, ticked through symbols Elias didn't understand but could feel. The air had changed, not just in temperature but in weight, in purpose. The ship wasn't just preparing. It was awakening, and it had a singular directive: strike. Elias stood frozen before the interface, his hand still faintly glowing where the ship had touched him. Behind him, Saria moved with sharp, calculated purpose, pulling open side panels, attempting override codes in rapid succession. None worked. Her lips pressed tight, her jaw clenched. She was far from calm, but her focus was lethal. I didn't activate anything. Elias shouted over the low, resonant hum. I didn't order it. Intent does not matter, she said coldly, not looking at him. The ship recognized your presence. It completed the loop. Authorization confirmed. So what now? He threw up his hands. I just beep-boop my way into ending civilizations. This is insane. She stopped. Her gaze met his, and for a moment she looked at him not as a puzzle or a weapon, but as a person. Tired, terrified. You were never meant to survive this long, she said quietly. That's what I believe. You were a prototype built to trigger, nothing more. And yet, he growled, here I am still triggering things. Saria approached him and he instinctively stepped back. I don't trust you, he said. She flinched barely, but he saw it. I didn't mean, he started, but she turned away. No, you're right to doubt me. Her voice was controlled but distant. I followed orders for years, without question, until I saw you. He wanted to believe that mattered, that her hesitation back in the cell meant more than protocol. But how could he believe anything now that he was some kind of walking bioweapon? The core trembled again. From far below, a mechanical groan echoed through the walls, a sound like stone tearing apart. Saria straightened. If we cannot stop the countdown, we must sever the core link manually. That sounds painful. For the ship, still not great. She stepped toward a narrow corridor that branched off the core, one lined with pulsing cables and arcing plasma threads. Elias eyed it with a mix of dread and growing nausea. I hate that I'm asking this, he said, but is this where the central brain is? She gave a sharp nod. Organic control lattice. If we disrupt its coherence field, it may force a restart, long enough to abort the launch. Great, he muttered. Stab the brain to save the galaxy. Classic fix. They moved fast, down the corridor into the heart of the ship. The walls were wetter here, pulsing, alive in ways that made Elia's stomach turn. It felt like walking through the throat of something ancient and dreaming. I don't remember my childhood, he said suddenly. I thought I did, but now I think. Maybe none of it was real. Saria didn't answer. There was a woman, blonde, not like you, softer. She used to sing to me. I thought she was my mother. Maybe she was. His voice cracked. Maybe she was. Finally, Saria spoke. They likely placed false memories, emotional anchors to keep your humanity stable. Stable? I can barely hold my thoughts together. I don't feel stable. No one does, she said, especially in war. That silence between them, dense and cracking, lasted until they reached the core lattice. It was worse than Elias imagined. The room pulsed with bioluminescent veins, all feeding into a central stalk, an enormous tree-like mass of synaptic tissue and crystal growth. It breathed slowly, deeply, and at its base, a black pulsing node. The nexus, Saria said. If I destroy that node, it should rupture the command link. Should? She turned to him. We do not have a better plan. He hesitated. Let me do it. No. Why not? Because the node may defend itself. You are connected to it. You are its key. You might not survive the severance. Elias shook his head. You think I want to live knowing I'm a virus wrapped in a man? She stepped forward, fierce. You are not a virus. You are you. Whoever made you, whatever they intended, they failed, because you chose not to be what they designed. That sounds noble, he said with a bitter smile. Until I sneeze and wipe out a continent. She gripped his arm. You are not your creator's plan. And he believed her for a moment. Then the node pulsed and a projection burst from it, not light, memory. A vision filled the chamber, holographic and intimate. A lab, a child hymn strapped to a table, scientists arguing, a woman in uniform watching with folded arms, and Saria, younger, standing behind glass. Elias' blood turned to ice. He turned toward her, voice hoarse. You were there. She didn't deny it. You knew. I didn't remember until now. I was young, barely inducted. They brought me to observe, a diplomatic gesture. I didn't know what I was seeing. He staggered back. So I was just a gesture. Her voice broke. I didn't choose that. I didn't know it was you. I swear it. He looked away. Maybe I was meant to kill your people. Maybe you were meant to watch. The node pulsed again, violently. The room shook. Elias stepped toward it, fury in his bones. Then maybe I'll be the one to end it. No, Elias. But he'd already placed his hands on the node. Pain exploded through his skull. The ship screamed. He saw every kill order, every test, every lie buried in his DNA. And beyond it all, he saw the truth. He hadn't been built to destroy. He had been built to control those who could. His blood carried not death, but command. And now the ship, raging and half-sentient, was resisting that control. Saria shouted something, but it was drowned out by the psychic roar of the lattice collapsing inward. And then, darkness. When Elias opened his eyes, he was on the floor, chest heaving. The countdown was gone. Saria knelt beside him, hand trembling on his shoulder. You stopped it. He blinked, disoriented. I didn't destroy it. No, you reprogrammed it. He looked at her, really looked. She was scared, not of him but for him. And he realized something had changed, not in the ship, in him. The silence after the chaos was jarring. For the first time since he woke in the cell, Elias heard his own heartbeat, steady, raw, real. The ship, once alive with hostile intent, now hummed like a sleeping creature at peace. Its lights dimmed to a soft amber. The floor no longer pulsed with aggression but with something calmer, more neutral. He lay there, still, not from weakness but from the strange awareness that something inside him had shifted beyond repair, and maybe beyond fear. He sat up slowly. Saria hadn't moved far. She knelt by the remains of the node chamber, one hand braced on the floor, her eyes still locked on him. There was a question in her gaze, but she didn't speak. He wasn't sure if it was because she didn't know what to ask or because she was afraid of the answer. "I didn't know I could do that," Elias said quietly. "You commanded the system," she replied, voice low. "It obeyed. You overrode its purpose." He wiped his face with shaking hands. "I didn't destroy it, I just gave it new instructions." She nodded. "You turned a weapon into silence." A pause, not uncomfortable, just full of unspoken things. "I remembered more," he said, voice hoarse. "When I touched the node, I saw them, my creators, scientists, engineers, people playing God and losing track of the rules. They weren't evil, not all of them, but they were cold, detached. I was an equation to them." Saria didn't interrupt, she just listened. "I was supposed to be a command vector," he continued. "To infiltrate, control, pacify, not destroy, not directly, just guide the weapon to its target." She looked away, jaw tight. "And I saw you, not here, not now, then, watching." "Yes," she admitted, "I remembered it too." Elias stood, unsteady but upright. "You were young." "Barely a cadet," she said. "I thought I was witnessing a peacekeeping collaboration. They didn't tell me the truth either." "Do you believe me?" "I do." She met his gaze. "But more importantly, you believe you." That truth settled between them, not a victory, but something close to healing. They returned to the ship's central hall. It was quieter now. The organic walls had drawn back, revealing clean, symmetrical walkways, remnants of the original warship design, not the half-living architecture it had grown into under the influence of weaponized AI. It was as though the ship, no longer under hostile programming, was remembering what it had once been. They didn't speak for a long while. Their footsteps echoed softly, no longer chased by alarms or the tension of pursuit. Eventually, they reached the observation deck. Through the curved glass, the dead planet below loomed barren, gray, cratered by old wars long forgotten. "I used to think space was beautiful," Elias murmured. Saria tilted her head slightly. "It still is." "I know," he said, "but not the way I thought. I used to imagine it was this quiet place of wonder, endless, free, but it's not quiet, is it? It remembers everything, war, grief, choices made 1,000 years ago still echoing." "It remembers," she agreed, "but it also forgives." He turned to her, startled. "Forgives? I believed I was only what they trained me to be, a soldier, a weapon, unyielding." She looked out the window, her voice softer now. "But I hesitated, I disobeyed, I chose to help you, and I thought that made me weak." He waited, "But I was wrong," she finished. "It made me free." Their eyes met. "Do you think we're the only ones like us?" he asked. "No," she said without hesitation. "But we may be the first to survive long enough to know what it means." The ship's interface pinged softly nearby. A message scrolled across the display. "Long-range beacon detected. Incoming vessel unidentified signature." Saria stepped closer. "They found us." "Yours." She scanned the data. "No, not my people, not yours either. This is something else." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "We can't exactly explain what happened here in a report, can we?" She smirked faintly. "Highly unlikely." The interface pinged again. "Incoming hail." Elias hesitated. "Do we answer?" Saria looked at him, then placed her hand beside his on the console. Together they touched it. A small projection flickered to life, static at first, then a voice, garbled and alien, speaking in a language neither of them recognized. It was curious, non-hostile, layered in nuance and musical tone. The message repeated once, then stopped. Saria blinked. I do not know this dialect. Do you want to find out? She looked at him for a long moment. Do you? He didn't answer right away, but something in his chest, a part of him that had once only existed to obey, felt different now. Rewritten. Alive. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I do. They stood together at the console, waiting. The unknown ship was drawing closer, its signal steady. The stars outside pulsed quietly. Somewhere far away, the war they'd been forged in still raged unseen. But for now, here in this moment, they had a choice. Not a mission. Not a command. A choice. Saria turned to him just as he turned to her. You know, he said, breaking the quiet, for someone who was supposed to kill me, you've been very disappointing. She raised an eyebrow. And yet you are still here. Lucky me, he said with a tired smile. They stood side by side, gazing into the unknown. This was not where either of them expected to be, but it was exactly where they needed to be. And for the first time, neither one of them was